words of our Divine Mother from the book The Mother, Question and Answers of 1954, Volume 6, page 342. Question by a Sadhak. Sweet Mother, how can we find the Divine who is hidden in us? For this our Divine Mother says, this we have explained many times, but the first thing is to want it and know precisely that this comes first before all other things, that this is the important thing. That is the first condition. All the rest may come later. This is the essential condition. You see, if once in a while, from time to time, when you have nothing to do and all goes well and you are unoccupied, suddenly you tell yourself, I would like so much to find the Divine. Well, it may take hundreds and thousands of years if you travel in this way. But if it is the important thing, the only thing that matters, and if everything else comes afterwards and you want nothing but this, then this is the first condition. You must first establish this. Later, we may speak of what follows. First this, that all the rest does not count. And only this counts, that one is ready to give up everything to have this, that it is the only thing of importance in life. Then one puts oneself in the condition of being able to take a step forward. Then the sadhak says, Sweet Mother, one day you said that if one makes mistakes, knowing that one is making a mistake, one pushes the divine grace away and builds a wall, a veritable wall between the divine and himself. For this, our Divine Mother says, I don't remember exactly what I said, but there is one thing. If you make a mistake, knowing that it is a mistake, and continue to commit it all the time, then you do that. If through ignorance you make a mistake because you don't know that it is a mistake, you may have very unpleasant consequences. But you won't push away the divine because you have done the thing through ignorance. That's not to say that the fault is not a fault. It is a fault all the same. But as I said, you are not in the state in which you push away the divine grace. But if you know that it is a fault and you commit it all the same, all the time, each time you do so, you are pushing away the divine grace, and you push it away a little farther and you become more closer to the asuric forces. Then the sadhak says, Mother, there are mistakes. One knows that they are mistakes, but still it is as though one were pushed into making them. Then for that, our Divine Mother says, pushed by what? This is exactly what happens. It is the lower nature, the instincts of the subconscious which governs you and make you do things that you should not do. And so it is a choice between your will and accepting submission. There is always a moment when one can decide. There is always a moment when one can decide. It goes to the point where, as I said, there is even a moment when one can decide to be ill or not to be ill. But for that, one must have an extremely awakened consciousness, because this speck is infinitesimal in time and like the 100th part of a second. And because before it one can do nothing, and after it one can do nothing. But at that moment one can. And if one is absolutely awake, one can at that moment take the decision. But for ordinary things, for example, giving away before an impulse or refusing it, it is not a space, not even the space of a second. One has plenty of time before him. One certainly has several minutes. And it is a choice between the weak submission and controlling will. And if the will is clear, if it is based on truth, if truly it obeys the truth and is clear, it always has the power to refuse the wrong moment. It has the power to refuse the wrong moment. It is an excuse when you give yourself, when you say, I couldn't. It is not true. It is that truly you have wanted it in the right way. For there is always the choice between saying yes and saying no. But one chooses to be weak and later gives oneself this excuse saying, "It is not my fault, it was stronger than I." Our Divine Mother says, "It is your fault if the thing was stronger than you, because you are not these impulses. You are a conscious soul and an intelligent will, and your duty is to see that this is what governs you and not the impulses from below." Then the sadhak has another question. "Sweet Mother, is truth in thought the same thing as purity in thought?" For that, our Divine Mother says, these of course are just definitions. It depends on the context. It simply means that the thought is expressing the truth. Inevitably, a thought which expresses the truth is necessarily a thought which is pure, and otherwise it cannot express the truth. Sweet Mother, how can one make their consciousness vast? For that, our Divine Mother says, vast? There are many ways of doing this. The easiest is to identify yourself with something vast. For instance, when you feel that you're shut up in a completely narrow, unlimited thought, will, consciousness, when you feel as though you were in a shell, then you begin thinking about something very vast, as for example, the immensity of waters of an ocean. And if really you can think of this ocean and how it stretches out far and far and far in all directions like this, and Mother stretches her arms out and then says, how compared with you, it is so far that you cannot even see the other shore. You cannot reach its end anywhere, neither behind or in front, nor in the right or in the left. It is wide, wide, wide. You think of this, and then you feel that you're floating on the sea like that, and that there are no limits. This is very easy, and then you can widen your consciousness a little. Other people, says our Divine Mother, other people, for example, begin looking at the sky, and then they imagine all those spaces between all those stars and all that kind of infinity of spaces in which the earth is a tiny point, and you too are just a small tiny point, smaller than an ant on the earth. And so you look at the sky and feel that you're floating in these infinite spaces between the planets, and that you're growing vaster and vaster to go farther and farther. Some people succeed with this. There is a way also by trying to identify yourself with all things around earth, upon earth. For example, when you have a small narrow vision of something and are heard by others' vision and point of view, you must begin by shifting your consciousness, try to put it in others, and try gradually to identify yourself with all the different ways of thinking of all others. This is a little more, how shall I put it, dangerous, because to identify oneself with the thought and the will of others means to identify oneself with a heap of stupidities, and Mother laughs, and bad wills, and this may bring consequences which are not really very good. But still, some people do this more easily. For instance, when they are in disagreement with someone, in order to widen their consciousness, they try to put themselves in the place of others and see the thing not from their own point of view, from that point of view of the other. This widens the consciousness, though not as much as the first way. I spoke about that, which are quite innocent. They don't do any harm. They do you much good. They make you very peaceful, unlike this one. And then our Divine Mother says there are a lot of intellectual ways of widening the consciousness. These I've explained fully in my book, but in any way, when you are bored by something, when something is painful to you or very unpleasant, if you begin to think of the eternity of time, immensity of space, if you think of all that's gone before and all that comes afterwards, this isn't second in eternity, is truly a passing breath. And it seems you so utterly ridiculous to be upset by something which is eternity of time is. One doesn't even have the time to become aware of it. It has no place, no importance, because indeed is a second in eternity. If one can imagine to realize that, visualize, picture the little person one is in the little earth, and the tiny second of consciousness which for the moment is hurting you, is unpleasant for you, which is itself a second in your existence, and that you yourself have been making things, many things before, and will be many more things afterwards, and probably completely forgotten in the next 10 years. And how do I happen to attach any importance to that which I'm going to forget? If you can realize that first, then realize your little person, which is in a second and an eternity, not even a second, imperceptible, a fraction of a second in eternity, that the whole world has unrolled before this. We unroll yet indefinitely before, behind, and that, well, suddenly you sense the utter ridiculous of the importance you attach of what happened to you or what's happening to you or what people are thinking about you. Truly, you feel that to what extent it is absurd to attach any importance at all to one's life, to oneself, or what happens to you. And in the space of these 3 minutes, if you do this properly, just thinking of the space, all unpleasantness will sweep away. Even a very deep pain can be swept away. Simply a concentration, a place, put yourself into the infinity and to the eternity. Everything goes away. One comes out of it cleansed. One can get rid of all attachments and all the deepest sorrows or everything in this way if one knows how to do it in the right way. It immediately takes you out of all your little ego, and there we are. These are the divine words of our Divine Mother.